Belgijski novinar Filipa Bertašon živi i radi u Srbiji već 10 godina. Uskoro će međutim morati da napusti zemlju jer ga je BIA bez jasnog obrazloženja proglasila pretnjom po bezbednost Republike Srbije i njenih građana. Bertašon veruje da je ovde nepoželjan upravo zbog svog novinarskog rada, ali je započeo pravnu borbu da ostane u Srbiji između ostalog i zbog svoje porodice, supruge i 5-godišnje ćerke.
Philip, you've been living here for 10 years now, and now you will have to leave the country because Serbian authorities decided you are a security threat. Can you tell us how did this happen?
It started last year in February. I went to see the police for the foreigner to renew my visa, which is a family visa. I had to wait 3 months before to get an answer from the authorities. The day after the presidential election, it was on the 4th April 2017. My wife got a phone call from the BIA asking if I could come for an informative meeting. So I answered present, I was there. The meeting was very good, it was routine, nothing special. I left this confident, but a few weeks later the police called me to come again. And they explained me that the BIA messed up because they didn't give the report to the Ministry of Interior. So I had the choice, or I started again to ask for a new visa, or I decided to complain to the justice because I had the right to complain. I thought it was safer to do that, considering also the atmosphere against the journalists in Serbia. And the procedure, which was quite unusual. It's not every day that a foreign journalist is called by the BIA for an interview. The second thing, I was again called by the BIA for a second interview, which was also okay, but the question were a bit more deeper. It was mostly about my work as a journalist in Serbia. So, after this second interview, I got the decision of the MUP saying that I was a danger for the state security, but no explanation was given to me. We decided with my lawyer from the Human Law Center to complain to the administrative court. The decision of the administrative court fell in December 2017, saying that I was right and that the police was wrong not to give any reason why they consider me as an enemy of state. So in agreement with my lawyer, we decided to complain again to the administrative court.
About that second encounter with BIA officers, what did they ask you then? They were more interested in you. That was kind of a deep interview. They were asking you questions about your work as a correspondent, but what specifically they were asking?
It was a bit about my biography, but mostly, as you said, it was about my work as correspondent, especially for Le Courrier des Balkans. They asked me how did I come here, who were my contacts in Serbia, in Kosovo, in the region, if I was in touch with diplomats, if somebody asked me once to work as a spy for a foreign country, and even if the BIA contacted me to work for them, which never happened.
Do you consider yourself a security threat?
Of course not, I'm not a security threat. But I can see that in Serbia the journalists who are doing their work objectively and professionally are often considered as a security threat.
So, having that in mind, were you surprised with this kind of decision of Serbian authorities?
Yes and no. I was surprised because the interview with the BIA was very cordial. It was very polite and open. There was no tricky question. So I was confident to get a positive answer. That side, it was a bad surprise that this answer was negative. But I wasn't surprised that these things happened, considering the general atmosphere in Serbia and the recurrent attacks against the freedom of media.
Do you think that this is somehow connected to any specific stories you've been working on during these 10 years?
Well, we used to call a cat. So I can imagine that our stories can be annoying for the authorities because we don't censor ourselves. We go deep in We go deep, not necessarily in the investigation, but when we observe something, we are not afraid to tell it. When I say something, it could be electoral fraud that I've been witness. It can be, as I said, the recurrent attacks against the journalist. But basically what we say, what we write, it's obvious, it's open, it's some things that everybody can see. And there is no secret. We work also in collaboration with local media, like Krik, for example. And when these media make investigations, of course, we think it's also our duty to take it and to put it the knowledge to the French audience.
And you were writing about many topics. You said that you wrote more than 3,600 articles. About politics, society. You were reporting on protests, about elections, about crisis in North Kosovo. You were very critical in your articles towards Aleksandar Vucic and Ana Brnabić.
No, I'm not necessarily very critical against Vucic, Mr. Vucic or Madame Brnabić in particular. Before Mr. Vucic came to power, we were also very critical against the leader from that time. And we are not only critical against Serbia, we are also critical against the leader. It can be in Kosovo, it can be in Macedonia or in Bosnia, wherever in the region. Everybody is treated on the same level. I
was saying that you were critical towards, main political figures during these 10 years. And yes. The governments were changing during that time.
Yes, we are not critical against particular figures, but against particular politics.
Okay, and do you think that during your work you made yourself any enemies? Who could be dissatisfied with your work?
I don't want to point the finger to anybody. I don't know who decided that I was an enemy of the state. It could be anybody in the administration. So I cannot answer to that reason, but of course there is some high responsible officers who decided that I was not welcome anymore in Serbia.
Have you ever had problems because of your work here in Serbia?
Never. In 10 years I had never problem.
No threats, attacks
never.
Or something? And before all this happened, did you have a feeling that, for example, since you're a foreign journalist, that you're more protected in some way than Serbian journalists?
Probably yes. When I compare my situation to the situation of the Serbian journalist, yes.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, I've never been a victim of any verbal nor any physical attacks nor any campaign in the media against me, like it was the case recently for Tamara Skroza in Pink and Informer, or even Stevan Dojcinovic and many others who just because they criticize the government, they can be attacked in the street by unknown people. I would like also to point out that all of these journalists complained to the authorities, to the police, and never, as I know, this complaint led to a favorable solution to them.
You said you were the first foreign journalist to interview Aleksandar Vucic as a prime minister in 2014. What was that interview like?
We started really friendly to talk about the Mr. Vucic politic now that how he's going to implement his politic now that it was prime minister. But we asked also some question that can be harder, I guess. In particular about his relation with the authorities of Abu Dhabi and the project that the Belgrade waterfront project. We mentioned some name like Mr. Mohammed Dalan, and we asked how Mr. Vucic knew Mr. Dalan. It seems that he didn't remember exactly who put them in contact. And I would say that from the moment we started to ask this question, the tone, the general atmosphere of this interview changed and became much more colder.
Mm-hmm. He was angry?
He's always angry against the journalists when they ask questions. So yes, I experiment what you can feel when you have to interview him. Yes, obviously he was not happy, he got nervous.
You've been working for many media, but primarily as a correspondent for Courrier des Balkans. You're also an editor. And what do they think about this situation? Have they asked for an explanation from Serbian authorities why they consider you a threat?
I have their total support, but they didn't get in contact with the Serbian authorities. They are in contact with international organizations for the defense and the protection of journalists, like Reporters Sans Frontières.
I suppose this is a really stressful thing, you know, like this battle with the bureaucracy, etc., and, you know, being targeted as a threat for national security. How did this affect your journalistic work?
Well, first of all, there is no reason, as I pointed out before, why I'm a target as an enemy of state. I don't know. I suppose that it's for my journalistic activities. It's not as a private person. I was afraid. I must say that for a while I slowed down my activities. You can call it self-censorship, but I wanted to be below the radar, yes. I realized that this strategy leads to nowhere, so I try to come over the fear and to go public. And if I go public, it's not only about my private case, because I want to make it known that this practicing of targeting somebody as an enemy of state without giving any reason can be potentially dangerous for the democracy. It happens to me today, it can happen to anybody else tomorrow.
So you are working on features or what?
No, I start again to talk about politics, but if there was some protest or some scandal, I try not to mention it. Yes. No, we are working on nice and positive stories in the region.
Okay, so you filed a lawsuit to administrative court, and so you're waiting their decision now.
Yes.
But if nothing changes, you will have to leave Serbia in May. Do you want to leave Serbia?
No, I don't want to leave my family here. My life is here.
Yeah.
If I leave the country, it needs to be my choice, our choice with my family, and not under the pressure of the authorities.
Is it going to be difficult for you and your family to leave this country and start over a new life back in Belgium?
Of course, we have a 5-year-old daughter. She needs to go to school in a language which is not her language. As for me, I need to find a job in any country where I go. My wife also needs to find a job. It's not that easy. We don't have money. It's not easy to start a new life from scratch.
What do you think, since you've been living here for a decade, what do you think about situation in media? Is it worse than 10 years ago, or better, or the same? I
didn't see so many attacks against the journalists since I came. It started obviously with when the Progressive Party went in power. Maybe there was also before some methods of pressure against the journalists, but it was not so obvious, it was not so brutal. So this is new, yes, and it's very worrying. But again, I'm not the only one to say that. I mentioned the last report of the European Commission. They've been very strict. They called the cat a cat. And they deplored the situation of the fundamental right of the press freedom. And they also mentioned the state capture, which is very brave for once from the European Commission to be so straight in their language.
Have you become paranoid, for example? Are you, turning around and are you afraid that someone is maybe following you, or someone is going to come to your door since this happened?
My opinion is that the goal of this operation, let's call it like this, was to create fear, was to make me afraid while I stay in Serbia. Yes, and I can say that I'm not afraid anymore.
You're not?
No.
How come? What changed meanwhile?
Well, fear is not a solution. We have to work on ourselves to go over fear, otherwise they won. And it's excluded.
Okay, thank you, Filip, for this interview.
Thank you very much to you.